Laurel, what are you doing?
Just enjoying our new Criterion Collection copy of Vampire.
Ah, I see. We're keeping this entire clip in the edit. Turn up your lights.
And proper cameras for
Lights, Camera, Chatter. Hello and welcome to Lights, Camera, Chatter, where we pause, rewind, and play our way through our favorite cinematic beats. We're your hosts, Noah Gorman.
and Laurel Pong.
A couple of teachers from Southeast Michigan.
Collector's editions. Awesome or massive waste of money?
I mean, guilty pleasure if we're being totally honest here. Our shelves are proof. But there's something about owning a physical piece of cinematic history. It's more than just a movie, you know? It's a statement.
Exactly. It's the bragging rights, the exclusive content, the sheer heft of some of these packages. It's like, I spent nearly double on this Blu-ray as if I had gotten the vanilla edition, so it better look good.
And the extras, honestly, my personal favorite part. Commentaries, deleted scenes, making of documentaries, and then some. Lots of bloopers. Lots and lots of hilarious bloopers. It's a whole other movie experience. Plus, some of these covers are genuine works of art. Seriously, some of them are more entertaining than the movie itself. Jabberwocky pets. Sorry, got a cough there.
True, but the digital age makes you wonder, do we need all this physical media? Is it worth the space and the cost?
Good question. For me, it's about the experience, the unboxing, the feel, the display. It's a celebration of cinema, you know? Truthfully, our collection currently has 322 physical movies at the time of recording. Technically, if we're going to get down to it, 309 movies and 13 TV shows, some bits and pieces and some full seasons and series. But frankly, who's counting?
Okay. I'm sold. We're speaking for ourselves here, but let's dive in a little bit.
Why do people collect the collector's editions, or physical media at all for that matter? What's the appeal? Because we're looking at this as more of an opinion piece on why people like collecting, we scoured social media for a lot of this, so it's less a source of information, more a source of people's opinions. So that's just kind of a heads up as we go into this episode. We will talk objectively about some of these companies and what they have to offer, but this first piece is just simply why people do or do not appreciate the art of collecting films and collecting collector's editions.
It's subjective.
It is. So, Laurel, why, from your research, why do people enjoy getting collector's editions?
Well, some people share sentiments that each film is interesting in its own way. So even if, some creators don't do as well in terms of the quality of the film, you can tell that it was made with passion and it's very artistic.
I sincerely wonder what film was getting called out by that comment.
I don't know which film was getting called out.
Who said, yeah, this movie's awful, but, at least the director's passionate about it. What movie were they talking about?
I don't know which movie they were talking about, but what I will say is that, I'm sure it's not the first or the last.
Oh, for sure.
Having the movie physically is also something of a point when collecting movies, because then you have it physically. You don't have to worry about it going off of your favorite streaming service or...
It's been shown. We've seen it in recent years. Remember when people tried to bully Netflix and putting Friends back on? I know that's a show, but remember when people tried to bully Netflix and putting Friends back on?
The licensing, you don't have to worry about licenses expiring when you already physically own it. Which is why it costs more to own it, because you're basically paying to have it for your own private use. And, if the streaming services go out and the internet goes out, you can still put the movie in. You just need electricity. You don't need an internet connection for those.
Oh, absolutely. I remember distinctly with this, seeing people freak out, seeing their face. If you own a movie on, say, Prime Video, you have to pay separately for those, or YouTube Video, you can still lose access to those. Whether because your account got booted in any way, or because something happened where the rights completely disappeared, or the film got banned in some capacity, depending on the country you live in. There's a lot that can go wrong with digital ownership.
Yeah. And the thing with digital ownership is you're paying to be able to access a ton of content at once. So you're paying to be able to see a ton of content, but you don't necessarily pay to own it.
I know a number of people who have a streaming service so they can watch one thing on there.
Yeah, that's the part that's really hard.
And then, I mean, we got to talk about showing off, right? Like, is it the main? No, not by any means. But like, having a physical collection is such a cool thing. I remember when I was a kid. You know my friend Tegan, right?
Yeah.
When we were kids, the first time I went over to her house, her mom had like an entire wall of movies. Like we're talking shelves mounted into the wall, floor to ceiling, basically. Just movie, 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 movie.
I thought we had a lot of movies.
And that was like a combination of VHS and DVD because Blu-rays weren't a big thing yet at the time, and they were still in their very expensive days, just as we are with 4K right now. But as a kid, I thought that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. Mind you, I was 11. But still, that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And so there's just a fun to showing off.
Yeah. Having it as home decor on top of having a physical collection that you feel complete for having it completed. It's like in a video game where you're aiming to get all the achievements.
Yep.
But except like in this case it's collecting all the movies.
It's also a lot more expensive.
It is a lot more expensive than collecting Pokemon, yes.
I mean, also worth noting, restorations are such a big thing. Like, there are some movies that, if not for physical restorations, that we would never see because streaming services don't have a reason to host them. Maybe they weren't popular movies. Maybe they were at the time, but they wouldn't be popular now. Think about, like, old Alfred Hitchcock films, right?
Yeah.
But physical restoration, like, there are companies dedicated to restoration. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That have allowed us in the modern age to see these old movies as they were intended to appear to an audience.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these restorations are impressive too, and we'll talk about a little more about that when we get to after the subjective bit.
Yeah,
But,
and that,
yeah.
I mean, it also blends into nostalgia, right? There's
Yeah.
a sense of accomplishment of having that physical copy and being able to be like, oh, I love that movie. I actually have a physical copy of it right here. And oh, it's the special edition that has all these crazy features on it, right?
Yeah, this is something that I used to watch from a while ago that I finally have as a physical copy. That's also another reason.
Exactly.
It's a nostalgia of watching a film that you've already seen, but you know that you like that film already. So then just physically owning that favorite film and being able to rewatch it is awesome.
Just a few more points on this one. Streaming requires Wi-Fi or cell signal if you're doing it on your phone. A DVD just requires a player and functional electricity.
And owning a rare, hard-to-find movie that you can rewatch anytime is really awesome. And that's something that you can't do when you have spotty internet or a streaming service that decides to suddenly, like, take it away.
I mean, a good example, right in our own collection. It should be a surprise to literally no one in our audience that I'm a big horror movie fan, and I was trying to get all the Nightmare on Elm Street films and all the Friday the 13th films at one point. And for Friday the 13th, I was able to get all of them except for two, the 9th and 10th ones, which were significantly less popular movies to the point where most packs that weren't expensive didn't even have them. They were available as a DVD double feature in the early 2000s, but that was before I started watching horror. I found them on eBay. These movies are not on streaming platforms except for the pay individually sections, in which case you might as well get the physical copy for literally the same price. But that's a movie that I wouldn't be able to go and watch at all right now if we didn't have that physical copy, that double feature.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, of course, we already talked about special features, but physical films get a lot of special features, and typically Blu-ray and 4K will naturally have a higher quality over streaming just because of the aforementioned Wi-Fi/cell signal issue.
Yeah. And I will also say that along with those special features is usually some cool artwork and packaging stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And just supporting the artists and creators, right? Whether that be the artists who did the cover art or the creators of
yes.
Think about indie films that get a straight to DVD release or straight to 4K in the modern age because they don't have the money to put their movie up in a theater. It's typically indie movie, sometimes the film festival circuit, and then straight to that physical release.
Yeah, you're trying to like support your favorite artists and creators, rather it be the director themselves or the music composer.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone involved getting royalties, right?
Yeah.
We already talked about collectability and artwork and packaging, but just the preservation. We don't know what'll happen digital. It might be great forever. That's always a possibility. But as long as it doesn't break or scratch, you have a DVD forever. It'll deteriorate, but long after you're dead, you know?
It kind of reminds me of the preservation of books almost, because the ebook and book world is kind of similar in that, like, ebooks are really cool. You have them digitally, you have them theoretically forever, but sometimes those rights can be taken away. And
Ebooks tend to be
books,
a little more stable than streaming just because you are buying them individually.
Yeah.
In a similar way to, as I said before, if I buy a single movie on Amazon Prime.
And there are a lot of books out there that aren't digitized either.
True. There's a lot of movies that aren't digitized. Well, they're digitally restored, but they're not available on streaming at all. Think about your favorite movie that's not on streaming. Go ahead. Think about it.
I haven't seen Seven Seal anywhere.
On streaming?
No.
Only on the Criterion channel.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
But my point is, like, so many movies just literally are not available on streaming.
Not
so
on
if
the
you're
ones you think
someone
of.
who enjoys niche movies, I know we both are, otherwise we wouldn't have this podcast. If you're someone who enjoys niche movies, a lot of times your only option is a physical disc. Or, if it's an older movie, physical VHS tape, or Laserdisc, or Betamax, if you remember those. It was a little before our time.
That was before our time.
Still worth noting for sure. Now, because this is a subjective opinion piece, we should definitely cover reasons that people would be opposed to collection.
Oh, yeah. For starters...
It takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
I mean, our collection takes up, a few feet vertically, a few feet across. We have a few hundred movies. But as I mentioned, that friend who had a whole floor-to-ceiling collection that took up an entire living room wall, that's a lot. Like, ignoring just that it's a lot of movies, it takes up a lot of space, and not everyone's into that. Not everyone wants to dedicate that much space to a single medium. And that's okay.
Yeah, you should see our book closet. It's...
book closet on the podcast.
It's a lot less organized than our DVDs, but yes.
There's also legal stuff that comes on when you talk about foreign films. Some companies have gotten ways around, but some films are banned in various countries. If I may talk about such a controversial film, I believe it's 2014's The Interview, a satire comedy mocking Kim Jong-un.
Oh, yeah,
and that was, of course, banned in several countries, any of whom were allied with North Korea. But we also have films that were at one point or even still are technically banned in the United States. And so physical media, for those, if you want to get it in the States, tends to be expensive because you're paying either an import fee, a tariff, or both. Not to mention, Blu-rays on up, so Blu-rays and 4Ks, have something called region locking, and this is a way to help them enforce national bans, where some discs, like, for example, you purchase a European Blu-ray, if you have a regular American Blu-ray player that is not what we call region unlocked, you might not be able to play that European Blu-ray disc, or that South Asian Blu-ray disc.
And we're talking just about the United States here, but this applies to other countries outside the United States as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same way in the other direction. The US is region 1. Someone in Australia with a regular Blu-ray player from there that's not region unlocked will not be able to play an American Blu-ray copy of a film. And that's one of the nice things about region unlocked players, which nowadays are very easy to find. Back when Blu-ray was in its youth, when like you and I were in elementary school, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
For the audience's reference, we do have a region unlocked Blu-ray player, so we are able to watch these things, but not everyone has that luxury.
Yeah. And speaking of which, even if they are able to acquire some of these DVDs, it's overly expensive, and it could be due to like the import fees, or it could be just the fact that overall owning physical media is a lot more expensive than streaming services. Because streaming services, you have access to a lot of different movies and collections at once. Even though you have the possibility of them going away, you still have the chance to at least watch them before you decide to like buy a certain physical media. And
absolutely. And there's some streaming that is only on streaming. Think about Dropout TV, for example.
True.
There are only 2 streaming services that I'm particularly in favor of, and those are the Criterion channel and Shudder, which for those who don't know, Criterion channel focuses on like high quality films. We'll talk a little bit more about their physical media in a bit. And Shudder is a streaming service filled entirely with horror films and dark comedies. And some people just want to rent online. This is definitely one I understand a little bit less in the sense of, especially when you get old enough, like specifically the sweet spot in the late 90s and early 2000s, when DVD was relatively young. Those movies nowadays, you can get a disc copy for like, in some cases, $1. So in some cases, it's literally cheaper to buy a DVD than to rent it on streaming. So in that case, I don't get it. But for newer films that still cost a lot on physical media because they're new, I can totally understand that.
Now that we have discussed why people do and don't collect media, we're going to move on to this thing called boutique labels. I didn't even know that was a thing until Noah mentioned it earlier today, so the more you know, I guess. The definition of boutique label is the specialized editions of the film released by specialized boutique labels such as the Criterion Collection, Shout Factory, Arrow Video, and Umbrella Entertainment. Distributors such as A24, Neon, and G-Kids are often mistaken for boutique, but do not count because they are also the producers of said films. This mistake comes from the fact that they offer far more with their exclusive edition releases than most films from other production companies. And again, that's a really good point. With A24, Neon, and G-Kids, they do in fact have a lot of stuff with their editions that you don't...
More than like, for example, if we got a random Blu-ray of the basic version of Coraline.
They're the producer of the films, and yet you still have all of this special edition stuff when you normally wouldn't get that with a regular film. Whereas with like Criterion Collection, Shout Factory, they're boutique, so they're not the original producers, but they're restoring or adding special features, essentially.
Why don't we talk about boutique labels a little bit, speaking of, in a sense of what they offer. So, boutique labels offer often full-scale or high-quality restorations of otherwise less popular older films that otherwise might not even get the light of day, let alone any sort of fixing up. Even their releases of more popular movies get the special treatment and are often desirable because there's lots of exclusive special features which are often either educational or like exclusive in the sense that truly there's no other way to find them. High quality box art. Some people want their collections to be visually pretty as well. We don't personally care about that part, but that's definitely a known appeal. And no gimmicks. Everything there is with a purpose. Unless, of course, you're one of the folks who considers the idea of a collectible to be a gimmick in itself. And of course, the biggest facet of this...
actively preserving physical media! As physical media becomes more and more sparse, boutique labels are often taking care of films that may not otherwise receive physical distribution at all.
So what you were talking about earlier about some editions of movies being the only way you can get that movie in anything.
Yeah, it's not on streaming services. It's only physical because of these restorations.
That's half the fun sometimes. So if we're going to talk about boutique labels in general, we have to talk in detail about at least one of them, and that's the Criterion Collection, who kind of changed the game for film restoration and for the act of collecting movies. They've been around since 1984 and actually started with Laserdisc restorations. Now, we don't have enough data to know the average age of our audience yet, but I'd be willing to bet most of you don't even know what a Laserdisc is. They're almost the size of a vinyl, but imagine it's a DVD that size, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, they were much higher quality, but they were so expensive that it was just like, no one could afford them. But that's what made them so good for restoration of older movies. And that's how the Criterion Collection got its start. Now, in 2010, something that started as simply a storage place for extra stock, they introduced a video series called the Criterion Closet, where they put up videos of well-established filmmakers and actors going to the closet, often alone, just them and a camera, pulling their favorite movies off the Criterion shelf, showing them to the camera, and just talking about why they like and appreciate those movies. I think at this point, there's, if not over, nearly 100 Criterion Closet videos. I will fact check that and put the number on screen right now.
It sounds almost like our podcast in a way.
It's like our podcast, but even nicher.
And more organized.
And
More than
this
ours.
led Criterion Collection to become far more mainstream. All their movies, whenever possible, are fully restored to 4K or HD or SD, just depending on the platform. Of course, in order, that was the 4K UHD discs, Blu-rays, and DVDs. And their films, not always, but are often released in sets. They have small sets like pairing samurai movies Yojimbo and Sanjuro together, or the Trilogia di Guillermo del Toro, which are Guillermo del Toro's three big Spanish films, of course being Kronos, The Devil's Backbone, and Pan's Labyrinth in that order. Some larger, like the CC40, which was the Criterion Collection's 40th anniversary. It's 40 of their biggest movies. Or Ingmar Bergman's Cinema, which of course was 39 of Ingmar Bergman's biggest films. And many of these sets are highly specialized, like the Eclipse series, which typically a pack will have 3 to 5 movies. And these are a little more bare bones in terms of special features. They are, and I quote, a selection of lost, forgotten, or overshadowed films in simple, affordable editions. Each series is a brief, cinema-esque retrospective for the adventurous home viewer. We actually have one we'll show you guys when we do some of these kind of unboxing and look-throughs. And they also, Criterion offers a third type of film, and those are Janus originals. Janus Janus Films is older than the Criterion Collection. Actually, one of their first big films was a film we talked about last episode, Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. Janus Contemporaries released Blu-ray and DVD editions of acclaimed films, fresh from theaters following their streaming premieres on the Criterion channel. So nowadays, Janus released films are only available through Criterion, whether you do the physical through the Criterion Collection or the streaming through the Criterion channel. The other big allure of Criterion is, compared to other boutique labels, they do 4 major sales per year. They'll do 2 one-day flash sales on their website with, and I really mean this, Laurel knows, no heads up whatsoever. If you are not a subscriber to the Criterion channel, they give you notice right when it starts. They send you an email saying, hey, we are doing a 50% off sale for 24 hours.
That's basically it.
And during the sale, it only counts towards discs, and you cannot use it on pre-orders. Now, twice per year, typically but not always in July and November, through Barnes & Noble, which is their big brick and mortar distributor, they will do a 50% off sale that does include pre-orders, but it's only at Barnes & Noble. It's specifically not on their website. Also, an interesting detail we noticed, the flash sales are almost always on Tuesday. Laurel and I have a lot of Criterion Collection movies, 34 to be specific. Literally all of them purchased during these sales. Criterion knows what their moneymaker is, and there's a reason their sales spike during late February, early March, July, October, and November. And it's because of these sales. They don't expect you to buy them at full price, and that's part of why they're able to do so well.
We are moving on to the part where we're going to show some of the movies from our collection, some boutique and some collector's editions. This is not an unboxing of new movies, so do not expect that. Our listeners, you will only have our descriptions to go off of. Sorry about that. Our YouTube viewers, you'll be able to see as we describe what we are looking at. We are switching to real-life camera now.
First thing we're going to do, because we were talking about them most recently, is the Criterion Collection. So I pulled off the shelf a copy of The Silence of the Lambs for you guys. Your popular movie, first ever horror movie to win an Academy Award. And I believe still the only one, if not one of the only ones. This one comes in a beautiful slipcase. You can see all the Criterion editions have the main Criterion logo on there and a spine number. Go ahead and check that out. In this case, it says the special features as well as the description, of course, right on the back, just like any other Blu-ray or DVD you get. In this case, we have full digital restoration, approved by the director of photography from the original film with surround sound. Getting past that, we have audio commentary from 1994 featuring director Jonathan Demme, actors Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins, screenwriter Ted Talley, and former FBI agent John Douglas. Yes, really. New interview with film critic Maitland McDonough. 38 minutes of deleted scenes. That's a gosh darn lot. A 2005 interview with Demme and Foster. 4 documentaries featuring hours of interviews with cast and crew. Behind the scenes featurettes, storyboards, trailer, and a book that actually features an introduction by Foster. So I'm going to take this out of the slip casing here, and we get this awesome cover. You can see there, it's double-sided, it goes over. You can see the spine in the middle there. So I'm going to open this up. This is the book that it talked about. You can look through that. Set this off here. Then you have 2 discs in this case for the actual film. So yeah, that, like, you get a lot with the standard Criterion edition. So that was an example of the standard form of a Criterion film. We also talked about Eclipse series. Those look like this. This is Eclipse series 37, When Horror Came to Shochiku. It contains 4 movies: The X from Outer Space, Gokei the Body Snatcher from Hell, The Living Skeleton, and this one is called Genocide, though there are alternate translations of the name that talk about the bugs in the film that attack Planetarian H-bomb. But as you can see, if I take these out of the slipcase, these are kind of the opposite of what we just saw there. Very bare bones. They're very simple. And the whole point is just that they are old, obscure movies. You can see if I open one of them up, it's one of those super thin DVD cases that were really popular for like 5 minutes. Got your Eclipse logo, which of course is just a Criterion logo with a line through the middle and it's in yellow. And then a very short DVD guide here. Moving on from that, last but certainly not least, for the world of Criterion, is going to be Janus Contemporary. So this is Ryuichi Sakamoto's Opus, directed by Sora. This was filmed right before the pianist passed away. He did a private concert. There's actually, for the Janus Contemporaries, the new ones, there's only one major special feature, but it's a Meet the Filmmakers, which is an interview typically with the director and cinematographer, as well as a trailer for the original film. Interestingly, there's a flaw on the disc of this movie, which I find kind of hilarious, which is that there's an option for subtitles, both English and Japanese. There's no dialogue in the entire film. It's like, subtitles for what? Anyways, moving on to another boutique label. This is my Arrow video copy of Re-Animator. Some of you may know this. This is based on a H.P. Lovecraft story. You can see the entire special edition contents list right here. It's a long list. It's very similar to the Criterion style lists, as a lot of these boutique labels are. There's a specialized logo and kind of a cool thing. If you don't like, or box art, excuse me. If you don't like that box art, you can actually pull paper out and they actually do the original cover art inside. So you can pick whichever one is your favorite and carry on with your life. Similar setup to that. Here is a Shout Factory special edition. This is Trick or Treat. Fun fact, for any horror movies that Shout Factory does, they call it Scream Factory. You can see here on the side of the spine, got our whole long special features list on the back, including the original short that this movie is based on. And same thing here, if I were to slide the slipcover out. I have chosen the original cover for this, but you can also opt for an alternate cover. In this case, I preferred the original. Yeah, I left it as is. The last boutique label I'm going to show you guys right now is Umbrella Entertainment. They're an Australian company. These are Region 2, but Region Unlocked. So this may or may not work, depending on the Blu-ray player you have. This is a film that came out early last year, Late Night with the Devil. As you can see, it's a European copy because you got or actually Australian copy, because you got the MA15 rating rather than rated R that we have here in the United States. You can see there's a lot of special features on here. But even more interestingly, and we didn't want to splurge on this, there was a collector's cut that had a bunch of physical media, including the entire film, but on a VHS tape because it takes place in the 70s. And I will just put an image of everything that came with on screen right now. And then here's the disc. So carrying on from boutique labels, we also have some production company labels that have been mistaken for boutique labels. This is the official A24 exclusive edition of Marcel, the shell with shoes on. Another one with an excellent slipcase here. You can see all the special features on the back. All the A24 editions have the barcode as part of the cover art, which is kind of neat. If we look into the slipcase here, this one just says The Movie on the front. And we open this up, you see the film. I'm going to rotate that up for you guys. If I open this further, a little bit of a pain to get out, but there is a whole book in here about the making of the film. Kind of a neat little addition that A24 gave us here. Last but certainly not least, we need to talk about these because they're fairly popular right now. Studio Ghibli, their American distribution is by G-Kids, and G-Kids puts out collector's steelbooks of all their movies. Other than The Boy and the Heron, they're all very simple. They have one character, maybe two characters from the film on the cover. Other than that, it's just a solid color. You can see they don't have much going on the back in general. Of course, The Boy and the Heron, they decided to do the box art all the way around. Most of them have a Blu-ray and DVD copy. The Boy and the Heron specifically has a 4K and standard Blu-ray instead. The special features across all of these are basically the same. You get the English and Japanese iterations with interviews from the cast and crew. Again, both the American and Japanese cast and crew. The other cool thing they have, though, is storyboards. So you can actually watch the movie as a series of storyboards.
We are kind of biased because we do have a collection of our own, but collecting physical media is cool for various reasons, right, Noah?
I mean, absolutely. There's, of course, as we talked about in summary, there's the appeal of just having a physical copy. There's so much that you can learn from these collector's editions with all the different special behind-the-scenes interests that they have, and even educational content.
Sweet. I think that wraps it up. Until next time, this has been
Lights, Camera, Chatter. And